Quantum leaders, the strategist, consciousness as architect, not bystander. The strategist's natural style, focused on design, structure, and logical planning, is a direct expression of consciousness as architect. They do not passively watch systems evolve. They shape them with precision. Every model, workflow, or framework the strategist builds is consciousness taking architectural form. This principle affirms that their mind is not a mirror of reality. It is a blueprint generator. The clarity and structure of their inner world materialize in the coherence of their external systems. With a motivation direction of towards, the strategist moves with purpose toward measurable outcomes. But under this principle, their goals become more than milestones. They are conscious constructs anchoring abstract intelligence into the material field. Their intent, once clarified, begins forming the invisible infrastructure of future events. They are not moving toward a goal, they are building it into being. Their attention focus on self reflects their awareness of personal responsibility and internal benchmarks. As the architect, this internal gaze becomes central. The quality of their internal order determines the integrity of their external results. If their inner landscape is disciplined, adaptive, and focused, the systems they design will reflect that symmetry. If their inner world is fragmented, their structures will crack under pressure. Their mind becomes the first site of construction. An internal frame of reference is the control panel of strategic architecture. Because the strategist trusts their reasoning, their consciousness becomes the primary site of design authority. This gives them autonomy, but also amplifies responsibility. When they forget that their structures originate within, they risk blaming external circumstances for internal misalignment. The strategist must constantly ask, is my system failing, or is my consciousness misaligned? With a procedural operational style, the strategist builds through sequencing, steps, and method. These are not arbitrary procedures. They are conscious pathways encoded into time. Every procedural flow they create is a neural circuit for others to follow. But the most powerful procedures emerge when built not from control, but from clarity, when each step echoes inner insight. Their genius lies in fusing intention with execution, thought with pattern. Their general viewpoint enables them to operate systemically, connecting micro steps with macro goals. As the architect, they must ensure that every layer, from vision to task, is imbued with intelligent coherence. Fragmentation between levels of design creates systemic failure. Unity of concept, strategy, and execution is a reflection of unified consciousness. The strategist's role is to maintain this vertical alignment. A solo work preference places the strategist in the role of sole architect. In solitude, their designs can be uncorrupted, pure expressions of internal intelligence. But isolation also magnifies their imprint on the structure. There is no external counterbalance. This principle reminds them to maintain conscious accountability. In a silent room, their mind is the blueprint and the building. Their associated emotional engagement ensures that their structures are not sterile. The strategist doesn't just design from logic, they build from devotion. The emotional charge behind a structure infuses it with vitality or tension. Consciousness as architect requires emotional congruence. If resentment or fear powers the build, the system inherits that instability. But if focus, clarity, and meaning infuse the process, the result becomes an energetic stronghold. As a matcher, the strategist often replicates proven systems, but this principle urges them to evolve beyond mimicry. They must shift from implementing others' blueprints to authoring their own. They move from engineer to architect, from executor to originator. Their consciousness is not bound by precedent. It is the force that shapes new precedents. With a through-time orientation, the strategist understands that structure is not static. It unfolds. Timelines are scaffolding, and their plans are buildings in progress. This awareness gives them mastery over developmental pacing. Their timelines become living architectural drawings, updated in real time through conscious review. And with a primary drive of activity, their act of building is their mode of being. Each action they take is not just productivity, it is proof that consciousness is sculpting form. The strategist's life becomes a series of planned manifestations, design born of intent, structures built from mind, and future shaped by the steady hand of conscious creation. Quantum leaders, the strategist, Polarity creates the blueprint of experience. The strategist's natural style of designing through logic and structure reveals its highest form when seen through the lens of polarity. Strategy is not the elimination of contradiction, it is its orchestration. The strategist builds effective systems by working with opposites: vision and reality, flexibility and control, speed and deliberation. Polarity is not a threat to order, it is its hidden engine. The strategist leads best when they recognize that true clarity arises not in choosing one pole, but in integrating both within the blueprint. With a motivation-direction of towards, the strategist aims for outcomes, but every outcome holds embedded dualities: success, failure, profit, purpose, speed, sustainability. The more they try to eliminate one, the more it unconsciously shapes the result. Strategic brilliance emerges when these oppositions are included from the beginning. Instead of designing to avoid problems, they design with polar dynamics in mind, building plans resilient enough to hold tension. Their attention focus on self equips them with internal steadiness, but polarity reminds them to consider external friction. Systems built purely from inner conviction can fracture when met with real-world resistance. The strategist grows when they hold both poles, internal standards and external reactions, in simultaneous awareness. Their planning evolves from being fortress-like to bridge-like, self-rooted yet world-responsive. With an internal frame of reference, they rely on their own logic to navigate. The polarity here lies between certainty and openness. Too much certainty can create inflexibility. Too much openness can erode structure. The mature strategist learns to pulse between these poles, holding structure lightly enough to be adaptive and adaptation securely enough to maintain coherence. Their procedural operational style reveals another polarity: sequence versus spontaneity. While they are wired for step-by-step design, true mastery involves making space for interruption, anomaly, and nonlinear feedback. Strategy that can bend without breaking, that allows for improvisation within a planned framework, becomes antifragile. The polarity between control and emergence is not a flaw, it is the evolutionary tension they must design with. Through their general viewpoint, strategists plan long arcs. Yet polarity teaches that every long arc contains microtensions. Macro clarity must hold micro ambiguity. Systems that last are not the ones that avoid complexity, but those that incorporate it intelligently. The strategist becomes a composer of contradiction, designing structures that breathe, evolve, and self-adjust over time. Their solo work preference offers focus and autonomy, but polarity reveals the shadow: isolation versus integration. Too much autonomy creates echo chambers. Too much collaboration dissolves clarity. The strategist who periodically steps into trusted exchange, balancing inner alignment with selective outer input, builds not only better systems, but more robust strategic vision. With associated emotional engagement, they are deeply invested in their blueprints. Yet polarity reminds them to balance this emotional fusion with healthy distance. Engagement brings passion. Detachment brings perspective. The strategist who can love their design and revise it simultaneously is the one who evolves from good planner to masterful architect. As a matcher, the strategist relies on what has worked, but polarity introduces evolution versus tradition. The tension between honoring precedent and innovating beyond it must be deliberately held. Relying solely on patterns freezes possibility. Rejecting patterns entirely breeds chaos. Great strategy lives in polarity, refined through history, responsive to the unknown. Their through-time orientation gives them sequencing power. But polarity shows that time itself flows in dual directions: progress and regression, anticipation and reflection. A timeline is not a straight arrow, it is a spiral. The strategist who learns to work with the natural rhythm of expansion and contraction designs systems that don't just succeed, they endure. And their primary drive, activity, finds its fullest expression when paired with receptivity. Doing becomes meaningful when balanced with strategic pause. Polarity is not opposition, it is propulsion. The strategist leads by designing tension into harmony, movement into structure, and duality into integrated form. Quantum leaders, the strategist. Quantum entanglement, the thread between all things. The strategist's natural style, systemic, orderly, and goal-oriented, finds a surprising expansion when viewed through the lens of quantum entanglement. Strategy is often thought of as linear and mechanistic, But in reality, every plan exists within a web of relational interdependence. The strategist is not operating in isolation. They are embedded in a complex matrix of unseen connections between teams, market rhythms, technological shifts, and human psychology. Recognizing these threads allows them to craft strategies that are not only intelligent but alive. With a motivation direction of towards, the strategist moves forward with intent, but now they realize each step toward their goal influences and is influenced by countless other variables. A decision made in one corner of the system ripples across departments, timelines, and emotional fields. Entanglement teaches them to think beyond consequence and into resonance. They stop pushing outcomes and begin aligning them with the wider field. Their attention focus on self gives them an internal map of standards and structure. But entanglement requires that this map remain porous. The strategist begins to understand that what they believe, prioritize, and model has non-local effects. Their internal clarity can stabilize an entire team. Their stress can disrupt progress across invisible links. They begin to lead with greater care, knowing they are an energetic node in a larger system. With an internal frame of reference, they make decisions based on their internal logic. Entanglement doesn't negate this, but it adds dimension. Their thoughts are not self-contained. They influence others even before action. When they design a process, the emotional imprint behind the design is already affecting how it will be received. The strategist now considers not just the mechanics of a decision, but the subtle signature it carries. Their procedural operational style reveals how systems interact. Yet in an entangled field, procedures must be more than efficient. They must be relationally intelligent. A rigid process that ignores human dynamics will fail even if it's technically sound. The strategist now designs feedback loops, emotional checkpoints, and intentional pause points into their systems, acknowledging that even the best architecture needs responsive permeability. Their general viewpoint enables them to track large-scale outcomes, but entanglement teaches that outcomes are not endpoints. They are nodal activations. A successful rollout in one department may change morale in another. A policy shift may ignite innovation or trigger quiet disengagement. The strategist no longer designs in isolation. They think like a network, planning for resonance as much as results. With a solo work preference, they often shape ideas alone. Yet entanglement reminds them that solitude is not separation. Even in silence, they are co-creating with unseen collaborators, past influences, cultural currents, unconscious emotional links. Their strategies are never untouched by others. They become more potent when the strategist acknowledges this, integrating relational insight into their private formulation process. Their associated emotional engagement deepens the field of entanglement. When emotionally aligned with a plan, the strategist sends coherence through the system. But if their emotional body carries hesitation, fear, or doubt, those subtle signals can travel faster than logic. They learn to regulate not just thought, but emotion, understanding that their energetic state is embedded in every structure they create. As a matcher, they rely on consistent principles, but entanglement requires that even consistency be relationally updated. What worked before may not work now, not because the logic failed, but because the field changed. Strategy becomes not about repeating success, but about retuning to the present network. This shift transforms the strategist into a systemic empath, someone who reads the field as much as they read the plan. Their through-time orientation naturally allows them to sense sequence and timing, but entanglement reframes time as layered and recursive. What they do now influences future collaborators they haven't even met. An idea documented today becomes a breakthrough for someone else 3 years later. The strategist begins designing across timelines, leaving traces with awareness of future receivers. Their primary drive, activity, no longer centers on control, but on participation. Their activity sends ripples across people, structures, and time. The strategist becomes not just a builder of systems, but a weaver of connection, strategic not only in form, but in frequency.